Some journeys take us beyond the edge of life and back again. Real people, real stories. They've crossed the veil and touched the other side, revealing deeper truths about who we are and why we're here. Welcome back, and welcome to The Returned.
Hello, everyone. Please welcome Kevin Milsom. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us today. We're all eager to learn about your near-death experience, a transformative moment that you have shared completely that have changed your life. Thank you so much for joining us to shed some light on your journey. Can you tell us what life looked like before your NDE?
Thank you, Melina. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Before my near-death experience which was in October 2018, my life was, I guess, kind of normal. I mean, it was busy, it was very up and down, there was a lot going on. It maybe wasn't as routine as other lives, but the spirituality aspect of my life was very strong. And that had begun really when I was a child. I grew up in a large city in the west of England called Bristol, which is where the kind of pirate accent comes from. And I grew up in a house, a store, which was, I think, built in the 1600s. And I was around 7, and I started to experience paranormal activity. I'd become ill, and I'd had meningitis, and they didn't think I was going to make it. And they were about to cart me off to hospital in an ambulance, and I just suddenly got better, which was very, very odd and weird. And the doctor said words to that effect. He's a weird one. He's not wrong. And then after that, I started to experience oddness in my room. And we had a very old cellar and a storeroom on the ground floor. And I would experience what I thought was rats initially, because we had massive rats, the size of small dogs, huge things. And I thought it was the rats, but then they started whistling. And then they started singing, and then they started walking up the stairs through a locked door. And I thought, well, that's not very rat-like behavior. Those are some clever rats. But then it turned out that it was an old gentleman who used to walk up the stairs, and my bedroom was the only bedroom on the first floor. My parents were upstairs, and he would walk up, stand outside my door, rattle the door, and I'll walk in and sit on my bed, by which time I was under several layers of clothing and not coming out. And he would sit on my bed for maybe an hour, at which point I was heavily deprived of oxygen. And then he would be talking to me all the time in what I knew was English, but I couldn't understand a word of what he said. And then he would just stop. No going out, no out through the door. It would just go quiet. And eventually I would have to come out because of the air, and there'd be nobody there. And this went on night after night after night for, I can't remember how long, weeks, I think, possibly even months. And it kind of got weirder from there. I've just always been kind of open to that kind of thing, but I'm very curious and inquisitive and highly skeptical and very analytical. So my first task was to go to the library, get out every paranormal book I could find, research it, because I wanted to know that had anybody else experienced this, or was it me? Is it my problem? Am I losing the plot? And I very quickly got into paranormal research when I was about 7 or 8 because of that. And that kind of carried on a little bit. And then I left it alone. I didn't want it in my teenage years. So I went more into weird stuff like ufology, cryptozoology, kind of mysteries, that sort of thing. The Bermuda Triangle, blah, blah, blah. And then when I got into my teens, I decided with a friend, I met up with a school friend I hadn't seen for 10 years in Bristol. And we decided to explore faith. And so we went to every single religious outlet in the city, which was a lot. And we tried every single religious denomination, because I guess we were looking for answers. We were 21, 22. We were looking for the truth. And the last church we did was the Spiritualist Church, which I was aware of. I had been aware of because my mother did like to go to the Spiritualist Church. And at that time we had about 20 of them in Bristol. And that was the one, aside from the Quakers, which I absolutely love as well, the Spiritualist Church kind of gave us, I guess, more answers, maybe to our thinking. Because we were fascinated with what happens when we die. We find most religions kind of don't deal with that. And then after that, it's not what we were looking for. We were looking for, well, let's find some concrete answers. So then the research turned to spiritualism and the spiritualist history, which, you know, is 175 years old now-ish. And we just started getting deeper into it. And then we had a weird experience one day where we went to a church, and 3 middle-aged ladies came up to us after the service with me and my friend, and they said, "Is one of you called Andrew?" And my friend, who was called Andrew, said yes. And we're like, "Okay, what's going on here?" And they said, "We're starting something up. Would you like to come and join us?" And I'm thinking, I'm not well. And he was like, "Oh, yeah. We'd love to do it." He didn't ask what it was. And they just said, "Oh, it's to do with spiritual development." And I thought, so, they said, in a week, come and see us. And in a week, I'm saying to him, what if we go there? And then like a day later, we wake up handcuffed on a boat in the middle of the Indian Ocean with me going, "I told you so." But the group was actually what we call here in England, in the UK, a closed circle. And a circle is a development group and a closed circle is where you have the same people going every week. You know who is going. And so you get the chance to work together as a group and to develop as a group. And I sat in that we're 1985 now. And I sat in that, and the first time I sat, Lena, it was like being on a roller coaster. I couldn't believe what I was feeling. We sat for an hour in the dark, no music. And as soon as I closed my eyes, it was like I was picked up out of my body. I was on a roll. I was going up, I was going down. I was tall, I was short. I was this way, I was that way. Colors, faces. And at the end of the hour, I was literally like a cold sweat. And I said, "Wow, that is incredible." And they said, "Would you like to come back?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, because I want to know what this is. I'm curious by nature." It must have been the right time because I developed quite quickly, but I developed as a healer. I was healing in churches around 86. And then in 87, my mentor came to me, who I trusted immensely, and said, "It's time for you to go onto the church platform to be a medium." And I'd never given a message. I'd never done anything like that. I'd been a healer. Or I got inspiration through me to give words to other people, to speak. But I trusted her, and I went there, and I did it, and I worked in churches for quite a few years after that. And it was something that, is loved because the learning curve was just phenomenal. But you're building that development, that link between you and your spirit team, your spirit guides. And I loved it, and I'm still working in healing. And then prior to my NDE in 2018, I've been through a lot materially, not a lot of it good. And I was kind of having a quiet period with the spirituality. I was not doing anything at all, I don't think. I hadn't done anything for a few years. Because I was too busy focusing on day-to-day life, which was highly stressful. And I have to do maths now. I was 55? Yes, I was. I was 55. And I had a bit of a midlife crisis, and I couldn't afford a Harley Davidson. So I said to my wife, "What do I need to do?" "I need to do something." She said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I think being older, you kind of look back and you think, "Oh, I wish I'd done that." And when I was younger, I had a natural ability for sport. And I never capitalized on it, never utilized it in the slightest. And I just said, "I know, I'll be a soccer coach or a football coach." And I chose one of the hottest years. And I went out and I tried to keep up with 17-year-olds in 36-degree heat, which in hindsight probably wasn't my finest moment of intellectual thinking. But I've been diabetic since 2008. And my wife noticed, after a few sessions, she noticed I had a small hole in my foot, which I couldn't feel. And she said, "We need to look at that. We need to look at that." So I went to the doctors, and unfortunately, it got misdiagnosed and it wasn't treated very well. And I was basically told to go away and stop being a nuisance. And then it started really not being very well and going black. And so I went back again and I said, "I think there's something wrong." And again, sadly, it was misdiagnosed. I think they stuffed it with seaweed or something because obviously we live in the 17th century. And I was told to go away and stop being a nuisance. And then a week later, I was rushed into hospital because things weren't very good at all. And by the time I got to hospital, I went to one hospital, the closest, and they said, "You're dying. You need to go to a hospital 5 miles north because if you stay here, you'll be dead inside an hour," or something dramatic like that. So my wife did a Starsky and Hutch and drove me all the way there at breakneck speed. But again, by the time I got there, it was very evident that I was full of sepsis, blood poisoning, and my foot was black. I'd always been stupidly healthy till 55. I'd never stayed in hospital for anything. And I said, "Well, can you give me some tablets and then I can go home?" And they said, No, you need to stay. And they took me for an x-ray, and then they came back, and I could tell by their faces that something was wrong. And they said, "You're in trouble. We need to send you for an operation now." And I was wheeled down to surgery, and effectively they amputated half of my foot. So they took off 3 of my toes and essentially went into my foot and took out the insides. So if anyone's watching who's having a dinner, I'm really sorry. But my foot was like a cup, basically. So my foot was hollow. So I had some toes at the top, which didn't do anything. I had a tendon that was doing that. I had some bones that were kind of in the right place, but kind of weren't. Some had broken completely. And this hollow thing. But the blackness was still going, it was up to my ankle and going up my leg. And they said, well, it looks like we've got rid of some of it or most of it, but there's still some there. And I said, is that serious? Because these are the kind of things you ask in hospital when you're stupid. And they said, yes, if it goes over your knee, that's it. Because we can't cut you in half. So if it goes over your knee, that's that. So I was in a hospital bed. My heart had given out on the operating table. And they actually brought me back. They had to lower the dosage of the medication I was on. And I came back in time to actually hear them amputate my foot, which wasn't a pleasant experience because it was, yes, not very nice. But I was alive. But they said, we need to take your leg off. And so they sent every psychologist to my bed to make sure that, I was okay with that. And I said, well, yeah, because it's a choice between, okay, I've got one less leg than I had yesterday, but I'm alive. Or I can keep my leg and I can die. To me, it's a no-brainer. And so I was absolutely fine with that. And I'm thinking, I can have a robot leg. I can have a bionic leg. This is going to make me even more different. Ooh. So I was fine with it. And they scheduled the surgery for 9 o'clock the following morning. And I didn't realize in hospital, Melina, that when they think you're going to die, they wake you up every hour. Because they want to make sure that you're still there. So they kept waking me up and jabbing me and saying, oh, this is a jab for this and this is your blah, blah, blah. And they woke me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And they said, are you still with us? And I said, yes. And I didn't feel right. Something wasn't right. I had pains in my chest. And I'm British and I don't like to make a fuss. So there's a buzzer by the side of my bed. But I'm thinking, well, I don't want to ring that because the poor nurses on night duty, they don't want to come and see me. But it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And it felt like there was something sitting on my chest, heavy. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to have to make a hullabaloo. I'm going to have to make a fuss. And I leaned over to press the button to get the nurse. And I must have fallen back onto my bed. Because the next thing, I'm going down a tunnel of light, feet first. Probably at about warp 5, and I'm going down the tunnel, and I'm looking at my foot and thinking, oh, that's what it used to look like, because it's fully formed. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I can see bits of the tunnel. It's a bit like going down a road tunnel, but very, very quick. And I'm just taking it all in, because it's stimuli, stimuli, stimuli. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's pretty. Oh, there's a big light there. And I come out of the light, feet first, and I'm stood in a room that is the purest white I've ever seen. The floors, the ceiling, the walls, the room is alive. It's like it has consciousness. It is glowing. And I'm looking, and again, it hasn't really sunk in. I'm thinking, well, this is really interesting. But at no point did I think, oh, I died. Even though I've researched loads about, tunnel of light, all this kind of stuff. And I'm stood there and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, well, this is interesting. And there's a group of people in front of me and to my right. And one of them was my mother and one of them was my father-in-law. And my mother had been dead to that point, maths again, for 9 years and my father-in-law for 13 years. And my mother at the end of her life, Melina, she was confined to a bed. She had dementia. She had a whole variety of issues. She didn't know who she was. She couldn't walk. That was her life. And she passed at 84. And she ran towards me like a teenager. And I'm thinking, well, and again, it's weird because my brain's functioning at a very high level. It's like data of Star Trek. I'm taking in all these different stimuli and my brain's going, oh, look at that. And then here comes my mother running towards me like a teenager with father-in-law dutifully following on behind. And my mother starts talking to me. And my mother spoke like a Gatling gun, like a machine gun. I can see her mouth going up and down. And I'm still not kind of taking this in. I started to see you, my love, in it. Wait till you go through the door. Heaven is, oh, wait. And she starts to talk to me about what heaven is like. You should see the singing flowers, the talking animals, oh, the colours, like you've never seen, oh, the flower, oh, you won't believe it, oh, you won't believe it. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, it's slowly starting to dawn in my very, slow, dim candlelight bulb. And that's what that tunnel was. And she's talking to me and I'm fascinated and I can see a door in the wall, very thin outline of a door. And I know if I go through that door, I'm not coming back to it. Okay, that's another thing to take on. That's another stimuli. Still listening to mother going, the mouth is still going. Father-in-law knows when to stay quiet, and he's doing so. He smiles at me and nods and, all right, she's not changed, that's your mother. But now the process is now I'm kind of having a internal self-review of my life. And I find I'm doing that. And I'm going back through my life. Okay, I've got married. I've had kids. I've had interesting jobs. I've done this. I've seen that. I went over there. I did that. And then I get to my creativity. And it's, you haven't done 2% of what you should have done. I love to write. I've been writing since I was a child. I've been playing musical instruments since I was 6 or 7. I've had multiple opportunities to do things with them. Have I? Not really, no. And I got really cross with myself. I got really angry with myself. Not with anybody else, but with me. Oh, I'd let myself down. I've not fulfilled my role. I could have done so many things. Why didn't I do that in 1997? Why didn't I do that in 1984? Why? And I'm beating myself up. And my mother realizes now that I must have zoned out because I'm not even listening to her. I could just hear the voice go. And she said, well, as usual, you're not listening to me. Maybe you'll listen to him. And I'm thinking, father-in-law? No, he's not going to say anything. Who's him? Another point, Melina, the door opened and a man can walk through. Now, I'm not religious. I'm not a Christian. But if I had been a Christian, if I was a Christian, I would have said that man was Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ Spirit, because that man emanated pure love, unconditional love. He glowed with love, compassion, empathy, not a trace of judgment, not a single cell of judgment, love. And he walked up to me and he looked at me and he said, why are you here? And I thought, well, that's a good question. Can I phone a friend? I would really like to know. I said, I don't know. And he said, what do you want to do? The weird thing here, Melina, also, my mother's mouth, yabbity yabbity, him, purely mental, telepathic, no movement of the lips. But I could hear his voice in my head, a lovely deep voice. And he had the most amazing eyes that were incredible. And I'm staring into his eyes. And I started getting angry at myself again. And he puts his hand on my shoulder and I calm down immediately. And every time I get cross with myself or angry with myself, it's fine. Okay, sorry. But he says, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. And he says, well, think about it. And I said, but I've not achieved what I want to achieve. I've not done what I want to do. I should have done more for humanity. I should have done more for society. I should have done more in the community. I should have been a better servant. I had the understanding. I've got the vocabulary, the brain, the whatever. I could have done this, that, A, B, C, D, all the way down to Z. And he said, what do you want to do, Kevin? And I said, I think I need to go back. I've stuffed, there's things I need to do. He said, are you sure? I said, yes, I'm sure. And I meant it. And at that point, I woke up in my hospital bed. And about 10 to 15 minutes of Earth time had passed. Now, bear in mind, the blackness has gone up to my shin. Prior to this, it was just around my shin. So we got about 6 inches. We get to the knee. I'm toast. But something feels different, Melina. I'm laid in my hospital bed, and I've got a ring around me. It feels like a ring donut. And it's around my solar plexus, I would say. And at the time, I was working as what we call a distance healer. I was working for an online healing group where we gave out free healing globally every week. And we had about 1,000 healers, and we would get maybe 200 requests per group. I was a group leader. And then I would divvy them out with the healers in the group, about 20 of us. And we would send healing or prayers out to those people, maybe in India or Canada or wherever, And it was just to give them positive energy. And so my wife had gone online. I'd not been well enough to go online, onto Facebook. And my wife had said, because she'd been told that I was dying, she'd had that awful phone call, Melina. You need to come in quick. He's fading fast. So her and eldest daughter rushed to the hospital, but they missed me. I was down in surgery. And the doctors were convinced I was going to die because they'd never seen an injury to a foot that bad where the leg had not had to come off immediately. They were and I was very poor with the sepsis. I was very, very ill. But I felt different. Melina. There was this energy around me and it felt like healing. And I wasn't aware that my wife had gone to the healing website and I had 1,000 people praying for me. And then I had another 500 on Facebook or more. So I had 1,500 to 2,000 people praying for me at that moment. Catholics, Protestants, atheists, Sikhs, Hindus, spiritualists. Doesn't matter today. Doesn't matter at all. They were sending their prayers, their love, their best wishes. And it's all the same energy to me. And I can feel this around me. And I'm thinking, well, this is very old. This has been a very old evening. And by now it's 5:15 in the morning. A voice in my head said, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. And I thought, okay, but now I've got nearly 4 hours to wait till the amputation. I'm going to have my leg off. So I'm sat there and I'm talking to my leg about all the good times we've had and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking about my robot leg and what color it will be and what I can stick on it and all this kind of stuff and how I can freak people out by going, look at that. And all this kind of thing. And I've got nearly 4 hours to think about it. And it was a long 4 hours. 9 o'clock, the surgeon who saved my life came in and he was very blunt. And I think I was very blunt at the time because you become matter of fact when it's life or death, don't you? There's no grey area. Am I going to live? Am I going to die? Are you going to cut my leg off? Am I going to have a robot leg or not? So he said, morning, Kev. Are you ready for the amputation, mate? And all this kind of stuff. And I went, yeah. Yes, I am, Mr. Poskis. Yes, I am. He said, are you fine with it? You talked to the psychologist? Yes, I talked to the psychologist, sir. And he said, great. And a nurse came in, who I'd not seen before. She'd been on vacation, holiday. And he said, have a look at his leg. He said, it's amazing. Because people were coming around and photographing it because they'd never seen it. It was just in books. It'd never been. So it was a film star. You know, it were nurses doing selfies with it, which I found quite odd. Anyway, it's like, ugh. And it did look like something out of a horror film. It did look like I'd literally taken an axe to it or a scythe. So he said, have a look at that, nurse. He said, you won't see one like that. So she starts unraveling these bandages, all red and gooey and horrible. And she gets down to the foot bit, and she's looking at it like that. And I thought, yeah, you've not seen one like that. And she went, doctor, can you come here a moment? And he said, oh, he said, I've seen it. I did the surgery. She said, no, can you come here, please? Now. Now that's piqued my interest, Melinda, because I'm thinking, what the hell's going on down there? Have I got a horse's hoof? Is it an alien probe? What's going on here? And I voiced that opinion in so many words. Could you please tell me what's going on down there? Or words to that general effect. And he came over and he swore. And I thought, well, that can't be good. And I said, could you please let me in? He said, look for yourself. And I said, no, I don't want to look at it. I saw it yesterday. It's vital. It really was. And he said, Kevin, look at your blinking foot. But he didn't say blinking. He said, look at your foot now. I looked at it, Melina, and it was as pink as a baby's bottom. All trace of sepsis, gone. Everything, all gone. Pink as a baby's bum. And he said, well, how did that happen? And I thought, well, one of us is a doctor, and it ain't me. I'm pretty sure I don't have a PhD. I said, well, you tell me. And his mouth opened and closed a few times. And he looked at the nurse, and the nurse looked at him, and they both looked at me. And then they looked at the pile of books I had by my bedside cabinet, which were mostly about death, dying, spiritualism, God, life after death, magic. And I'm thinking, well, I've got a blinking good idea what's happened here, but I don't know. But I'm not going to tell you. And he said, well, the human body's a wonderful thing, isn't it, Kevin? And walked away. And he said, oh, by the way, the amputation is now cancelled because there's no reason for it. But so I'm now left with a cup foot, a hollow cup. And they said, well, obviously it's not going to heal itself. There's nothing there. There's no matter in the middle to knit together. So plastic surgery. So you'll be in hospital for about a month, and then we'll send you off to another hospital in Bristol. They'll fill it with plastic, and we'll go from there. Okay, all right. And I said, well, won't it heal by itself? And they no, there's no way. A week later, it starts healing by itself. And they go, well, how's that happening? And I said, again, I'm not a GP. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a PhD. And they said, well, these things are weird, but it could take 9 years for that to build, or 7 years, or years going down the line before it fully, took 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks. Filled itself all the way up. The toes didn't grow back, which would have been great. But it just filled itself back up again. And every day the nurses would come in and they'd measure it with a tape measure. And they go, you've got that much more in your foot today. How is this happening? I'm the patient here. The only one who understood me, Melina, was the hospital chaplain who came back. And she was a trained medic herself. And I went to another hospital to recuperate for 2 weeks and a bit. And she knocked on the door one day and said, hello, can I come in? And I said, yes. And she said, I'm the hospital chaplain. We shut the thing on. And I said, oh, lovely. Nice to meet you. She said, are you religious? And I said, no. She said, do you believe in God? And I said, oh, yes. Oh, yes. Always have them. And she said, well, I've seen your notes. Could we talk about the unconditional divine healing love of God's power? And I went, wow, yeah. And we sat and we prayed for about an hour and a half. We held hands. We talked. And she said, you shouldn't be here. You should be dead. And you should definitely have one less leg than you do now. You should be a flamingo. But she got it. She absolutely got it and understood it. And she said, isn't divine healing an amazing thing? And she said, I'm not talking religiously here. I'm talking just in general. Isn't it, You can find it in every faith. You can find it in every aspect. And I said, yeah, it is. And I didn't go into depth about, I didn't tell her about my NDE. I thought it might be a step too far. I didn't tell her about what I'd experienced or the ring around me or anything else. But she knew that I'd had sepsis up to my shin bone, and then I hadn't, because it just gone. And it just and gone. Because it was there when they came to check at me at 5 in the morning, and it was still there. But at 9 in the morning, it wasn't. It somehow done whatever it did, but it couldn't be explained away. And I still have issues with the foot. There's a tiny little hole where they went in with a scalpel initially. That's given me a lot of trouble. And I do have to have a little bit more surgery on it because the bones in my foot are starting to break down. Because it's been 7 years, and I had to learn to walk again on my heel. And that's caused problems in other parts of my leg. So I have to have my bones polished. That sounds weird, but I have to open up my foot, polish my bones, put it back together again, which is, I'm really looking forward to that one. But because otherwise the bones are going to crumble away. Because so much damage was done with the sepsis, and some of the bones just were removed or they just crumbled away over time. But I'm still here, and life has changed dramatically, probably more in the last 7 years than it has in the previous 55. So it's made me a different person. I think differently. I have much more connection, obviously, now with people like yourself who've had near-death experiences. And we set up groups where we just sit and chat and we talk and we share our experiences. And we say, isn't it wonderful? Aren't we lucky to have experienced something? A, we're lucky to be alive. B, life is precious and fragile, and every day should be special. And C, wow, what did you experience? What did you experience? Well, I saw this. And no two experiences are the same. I've done a lot of research into near-death experiences. And this is the other thing. Because had you me, you're about to have a near-death experience, what's going to happen to you? It would have been completely different. My version would have been, I'd have had the tunnel, because that's pretty stereotypical in a lot of cases. But I always see myself when I go over to meditate, I'm usually in a field full of animals. I'm usually in a forest, or I'm sat by water. Or I would have thought, well, I'd have gone over, I'd have seen my mother, I'd have seen my father, I'd have seen some friends I've lost. But I'd have been with flowers or in a nature setting, and I'd go into a white room. I'd never heard of a white room. But only when I did one of these about 3 years ago, somebody came in the comments and said, I've been in that white room. I know exactly what you mean. And I said, oh, wow, I'd never heard of it before. In all the books I'd researched, I'd never heard of this weird, white, glowing, alive room that was just incredible, absolutely incredible. But I'd never heard of it. So it's been lovely to kind of share with other people and to listen to their experiences. And that adds to my learning. And it is just a wonderful sharing experience. And it's lovely to do things like this because hopefully, it gives people the hope that life goes on beyond physical death. It gives people the hope that, what heaven is like, what the spirit, whatever you want to call it, nirvana, utopia, it's just peace. And all I can bring back from that wonderful room with that wonderful being of light, compassion, empathy, love, peace, calm, tranquility, knowledge, wisdom, and I'm myself, and every other living thing is precious and special and unique, that we're all connected. And I've had experiences like that before. I've felt that connectivity, that spiritual connectivity. But it just felt like I was, part of it. Just part of everything. So, I feel truly humbled and blessed.
You've had one heck of an NDE, haven't you? Had one heck of a life. You've had so many spiritual experiences. It's no wonder you had a near death, though.
Yeah.
Like that experience, I would say absolutely you would have, right? But I'm most curious. Well, there's a few things I'm curious, and I'm sure the viewers are as well. You saw your mother and you saw your father.
Yeah. They were together and looking a lot younger, maybe 20 years younger than when they passed, or 30 years younger. In my mother's case, 40 years younger even. Very lucid, very alive. And yet, here you are. Boom. But
that must have been a great feeling.
It was very interesting. And there was another group of people behind them who I didn't recognize, but I knew I was connected to. Maybe a soul group, maybe a spirit. I don't know. There were maybe another 8 to 10 people there. I could see their outlines, but I was focused on my mother. And so it's one of those things, and maybe you feel the same. I'd love to go back and have another go, but I'd love a notepad.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And a microphone.
It's something, though, it never goes away, though, does it?
No,
Like,
never.
you
Never.
remember it. I remember it like it was just yesterday, and obviously you as well. It's unbelievable how it just now. I don't even know sometimes what I'm doing in a room, and I can
No,
remember
and I never
it
remember
like,
dreams. I never remember my dreams. I'm very lucid dreams, but when I wake up, they're gone. There's nothing there. There's nothing. I might see a stimuli in the day. I might see a horse and go, oh, there's a horse in my dream last night. But I don't wake up and think, oh, I did A, B, C, D, E. I've been riding Harley trikes and I've been flying into the air and I've been fighting dragons, but I can't remember a darn thing. But this one, I remember every second of it. It wasn't a dream.
you remember what the man that came out of the door looked like?
He was wearing a white robe. He had dark hair down to about here. He had a beard, and he had a white robe that shimmered in colour. He was about my height. I'm 6'2", 6'3". He was about my height. He had amazing eyes, and sometimes I looked at his eyes and I thought they were bright blue, and at other times they were dark brown. They seemed to rest like David Bowie. They were almost like having one of his eyes were magnetic. It was almost like they were made of light, which changed like his robe. But he looked and sounded, I don't know. I mean, he spoke to me obviously in English, but mentally, he just looked like, I guess, something out the Bible, something from ancient Greece, something. He was wearing just a white robe that went down to the floor. I couldn't see his feet. And it wasn't the physicality, Melina. It was the energy that came from him. It was his power, his compassion, his love. That's what did it for me.
What did you feel that you go up, you see this door, and you must have been thinking, like, I'm not a practicing Christian, and this looks like to be, resemble Jesus. What did you think of that?
At the time, it never crossed my mind. And strangely enough, it seems to interest other people more than it did me, because people will often say to me, and they have done many, many times, "Oh, you saw Jesus." And I say, if I'm truthful, I can't tell you. If that was
That's exactly
Jesus
what
of
I
Nazareth,
say.
yeah, if that was the Christ Spirit, oh my God.
See, I say the same exact thing as you. I don't know what to actually say because I saw a very similar gentleman wearing
Really?
a similar outfit. Yes, I did. Yes. And so when people say, like, do you think it was Jesus? And I almost feel bad saying if it was.
Yes. That's how
Like,
I don't.
Yeah, and it's like, well, it resembles him, what I was taught that he looked like.
Stereotypically, yes.
Yes, but
If
I
he
can't
entered
say
the
for
Jesus,
sure.
yeah, if he'd entered the Jesus lookalike contest, he'd have won hands down.
Exactly.
But what does that mean? Could that have been a spirit guide of mine? I don't know. My main native.
It's not like you stopped and asked.
I know, that's why I want to go back. Excuse me, who are you? What are you doing here? What's your name? Autograph. My main spirit guide, I believe, is Native American, so it definitely wasn't him. Could it have been part of my spirit team? I don't know. Could it have been the Christ Spirit? I genuinely, hands on heart, I don't know. But it is something, and I find this interesting from a psychological perspective, it's something that seems to appeal to people more than I do, because I'm not religious. I've studied religion at university. I have an interest in faith and what makes people believe, because I'm fascinated by psychology and sociology and parapsychology and all the rest of it. So I'm fascinated by what gives people their belief structure. But I'm not religious. I kind of take bits from, I'm working on a meditation book at the moment called The Inner Church, which is basically me going to where I go to different faiths or philosophies. I take out what appeals to me and I put it in here. And that's my inner church. And in meditations, it's in a lovely Gothic church building. But all the stuff that I've picked up over the years, the decades, is in there. And there will be elements of Christianity in there. So, and I've gone with it. And I'm quite happy to accept that. And I know that cynics will say, well, there's no such thing. But to me, I'm an open-minded skeptic. But it has to be proven to me. It has to be shown to me. And so I don't just willy-nilly believe anything. It has to be proven to me, or it has to be demonstrated to me. And it'd be like somebody said, well, I can fly from London to New York. And I'd say, okay, show me. Oh, I can't do it if you're looking at me. Then you can't do it.
Kevin, how would you describe what happened to you and how did it change your life? Like, you were 55 when you had it?
Yes, I was.
And you came back, you were on the verge of losing your leg. So How do you explain this? What did you say to family and friends? Were you able to explain it at all?
Yeah, oh yes, I have no qualms. I've never been. I would never not tell people what I thought. That sounds bad, but if I believe in something, if somebody asked me what I believe in, I wouldn't say, "Oh, I can't tell you." I would go, "Look, you asked, you're getting it. This is what you asked for. If you don't like it, don't ask." But I will tell people I've got no qualms about doing that at all. A lot of my spiritual friends were shocked by it, but got it, understood it. Some people, there's obviously a medical explanation for that. And I said, well, then show me. Tell me then. What is it? Oh, it's probably on Google. No, I said, show me. Tell me what it is. Because I'd love to know. And the surgeon who operated on my foot and stood at the foot of my bed and swore, along with the nurse, would also like to know. I've got his number. We can go around and tell him. Because I'm sure it's been bugging him for 7 years. I think I think genuinely, it's a really good question, but I think all we can do as NDE survivors, we can put it out there. And people can accept it or they can deny it. They can, to me, it makes no, I don't know how you feel, but to me, if people say, I don't believe you, I say, well, I don't care. It's nothing to do with me. That's your individual perspective. That's how it is. How has it changed me as a person is quite, I'm braver now. I'm stronger. I'm not perfect.
Fear.
Sorry?
Do you carry any fear?
Of dying? God, no. No. Never really did. But that was the kind of final nail, I think. Because, again, talking to a fellow NDE survivor, go back to that point where you feel that love. Who wouldn't want that? There was no judgment. There was no, well, you've been a naughty boy, Mr. Milsom. Go and stand in the corner for 1,000 years and, stick on a dunce cap. It was love. It was compassion. It was empathy. I was home. Well, I was in a waiting room, but I was nearly home. Had I gone through the door, I would have been home. And my faith has always been strong, Melina. Stronger probably since coming back. And more curious. And again, this is why I love talking to people who have survived, who have had near-death experiences. Because it piques your curiosity, doesn't it? It makes you want to...
It certainly does, yes.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love those discussions with people that are always very bright, very open, very positive, very personal. Some people saw a figure like I did, or you did, and went, I saw Jesus. I don't judge them on that. I don't, I don't assume on that. If that's their interpretation, that's their interpretation. It isn't for me or anybody else to say that. And maybe that was part of their journey, their lesson. I don't know. As I say, I never judge anybody on what they've seen.
What do you think? So you had a choice. Do you think they would have let you come back if you said you wanted to go through the door?
No. I knew that door was and again, this I have encountered in many accounts of NDEs. A lot of them have a kind of a barrier. And it could be a bridge over a river, or it could be a door. In my case, it was a door in the wall. Very, very thin cut door in the wall with light behind the door. Like a yellowy light, actually, now I'm thinking of it. But like a golden light behind the white door. I knew if I went through that, Melina, I wasn't coming back. I was a hospital statistic. And that was all there was to it. It wasn't there wasn't going to be a happy end. Well, there'd have been a happy ending for me, but not for my poor wife and my daughters and my family and friends. I know I would have been okay. But I think, I don't know, I would have felt that disappointment. And 7 years down the line, in hindsight, when I think back at the stuff that I've managed to achieve and the people I've met, the new friends I've met, and I think, I always go back to, had I gone to that door, this wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have met those people. I wouldn't have had that, I wouldn't have tested myself and put myself out there. I wouldn't be working in the community now. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be doing that.
Was that a direct result of your life review that you came back and you decided that, hey, I need to put this leg in motion, right?
Nice one. I see what you did there. Yeah, very much so. Because I get disappointed now if I don't feel that I've achieved if I set myself a goal and I don't do it, I get cross at myself and I think, come on, go back to those 2 weeks. Or those 2 weeks in recuperation, where you stared at the hospital wall and you thought about this experience over and over and over, and you made that promise, and you made this promise, and you made that. And no, I've not done all of them, but I've done a lot of them. I've done more than I would have done had I got, had I not had the near-death experience. I think I'd have just carried on drifting because I would never have the confidence to believe in me. You know, who's going to read
really
my...
powerful.
Well, yeah, because who's going to read my writing? I'm not William Shakespeare. I'm not Charles Dickens. Who's going to read my crap? No one's going to read that rubbish. Who's going to listen to my music? I'm not Paul McCartney. I'm not Elton John. Who's going to listen to my stuff? So therefore, what's the point in doing it? And I've had that kind of lack of confidence all my life. But now it's kind of a different mentality. It's the go for it. Why not? Why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you do this? Oh, well, people might not. Oh, shut up and do it. So it's kind of gone to that now, where I kind of have a word with myself and say, no, do it, or have a go, or make plans to do it. Because, you know, I'm working on a lot of things at the moment, and in some ways I've overcompensated. Now I'm trying to juggle too many things. Whereas before I wasn't juggling anything. So, you know, that's brought new lessons in itself, and I'm now going into my 60s, and, you know, it's a whole world of pain, the 60s, I warn you now. But health is kind of, you know, health is a worry. So I don't have the energy that I had, you know, maybe 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30, you know, all that stuff, just that kind of stuff. And because of my foot, my balance has been a bit iffy at times, and my diabetes has not been good, and other things as well. So I'm learning to balance it now. Oh, I need to do this, but I also need to, I think, look after myself more and rest. So I take more care of myself now than I did prior to the NDE. I put myself first more, if that makes sense. I don't want that to sound selfish, but I wish I'd been more selfish in life, because I've spent probably 55 years giving my energy away to other people. And that was my life's mantra. And it didn't do me an awful lot of good. But I thought that's what you had to do. I thought that's what spiritual was being. Oh, you need this. I'll give you everything I have. And yeah, I did it. And then you end up with nothing, and you think, strange one. How did that work out?
Yeah, we can't forget about ourselves, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was doing. But now I don't. And I think it's a really good point, because I think that kind of sums it up, really, Melina. It is like that. I now probably, on really good days, I am driven to do things. And on bad days, I rest. On days with poor mental health or poor physical health, I actually give in and I go, okay, my body needs this, my brain needs this. I might have 25 years left of life. But to me, what I felt was in spirit, that was like that. So I think it felt like the time structure was different. I almost felt like time had kind of stopped there. And it's just a feeling that I had, and just an intuitive feeling that I had while I was there. So, 25 years, if my mother wants to see me, I'm sure it won't take as long as it will for me to get there, to get to that door. And next time I am going to the door, I'm sprinting, I'm kicking the door in, I'm breaking it down, I'm sprinting, because I want to see the singing animals, and I want to see the dancing flowers and the talking flowers, and I want to see the colours that I can only imagine in my head, and I want to feel the love, and I want to go flying through the sky, and all that stuff. But isn't it lovely to know that we've got that to come? Well, but
that's what I think is the best.
Yeah.
About near-death experiencers and what they bring to the table and what they tell everyone. Everybody's NDE has been completely personal and different. I don't think I've heard two of the same. Like, I've heard similar things, but not the same. But it's very personal to each. But I also can't seem to shake that it's for a reason that some people actually have NDEs and they come back and they're letting people know what they see. And I'll tell you, it eradicates fear in some. Sometimes people are looking to understand what's happening. They're scared. Right? I was once there. I know what that feels like, so we and a lot of other people, I think more now than I've heard in the last little while, are having near-death experiences or even coming forward with them, and they may have happened years and years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's the beauty of doing this with you. And because if one person hears this and it gives them hope that life goes on, or it eradicates that fear, high five to you. Because
that's exactly what I'm doing it for.
It's not about
just one person. If I can help one person,
exactly. It is, there is a higher, deeper purpose here. We went through that to come back and to share it. There's no point in sitting on that information. And I'm sure that, years ago, when maybe society was a bit more reserved, people would have had this and thought, selling a soul, because they would have got locked up. They'd have got
Yeah.
locked up. And I think it's a more open society now. I think especially with the internet, maybe too open at times, but it's certainly very open and very, freeing to be able to come on and share this. And now I want to know about your NDE, and I want and I want to now go and read books on this and books on that and stuff like that, because it just inspires me. It inspires me to learn more. And at the end of the day, if we're not here to learn, then why are we here? It's to pay bills.
What is your understanding of why we are here? In your words, in your opinion.
Oh, I love these. What? The meaning of life. What's the meaning of life, you're asking me?
Kind
I
of.
love the easy questions. To me, personally, and again, my personal opinion, the meaning of life is growth and development. Personal growth, personal development, and to become closer to the godlike. I'm a numerologist. I started studying numerology late 80s. Thought it was the biggest load of twaddle I've ever heard. Got into it, started doing chart, and been curious about it ever since. Much the same as other folk are. And within numerology, it's exactly the same. It's about growth, personal learning. Because in numerology, you see where you come in. It's a bit like a D&D game where you create a character and they come in with these attributes: strength, wisdom, knowledge, dexterity. But numerology gives us those. At what point do we come in at birth? What do we come in with? And then takes us through the lessons that we have to learn in life. Why are we doing that? Why are we learning? Why are we here? And so it's made me think very sideways on that, and kind of, for me, personal development, personal growth, I think to shine our light, find our inner light, A, to find that inner light, and B, to shine it out into the world. And by doing so, that brings us closer to God. That takes us maybe an inch, a foot, closer to the God source, to higher evolution, to higher understanding. We grow from the pain of life. Because if life was easy, there'd be no point coming down, would there? So we learn from the harsher elements of life. We learn from other people. We learn from ourselves. But it's all about growing. Surely it has to be. It's certainly not about paying taxes.
It definitely isn't that.
No.
Do you think that you came back, or did you notice if you had any sensitivities when you came back? Example, intuition, seeing energy, dreams, but you had those prior too. But did you feel anything increase maybe when you came back?
More, probably twins with self-belief. But I came back and I went away from the mediumship a little bit, and I thought, I've got holes in my learning. I've got gaps in my learning. Excuse me. So I did a load of study courses and studied different aspects, hypnotherapy, anything to do with the brain, CBT. And I thought, I need to help people, and I want to take people back and give them just a taster of what I felt in that white room. So I trained and qualified as a teacher in meditation, which I'd always found difficult before. I couldn't do it because I've got a creative brain. So if you put me in a dark room, the brain's going to go, once upon a time, there was a fish called Gerald. I taught, I've been teaching meditation now since 2019, 2020. So the year after I came back, I qualified. And that's going ridiculously well. And it's opened up new doors of opportunity and made new friends. I teach a class, I teach a public class here. And I also teach online as well. And I do one-to-one. Because to me, I want to take people back. Oh, I also qualified in sound therapy and music therapy, because the power of music and sound was always very powerful to me, and it's helped me a lot over the years. And I wanted to find out what it was all about. So I qualified as a sound therapist, and then I now combine that with the meditation, and we're looking at chakras and frequencies and vibrations and all this kind of stuff to affect different parts of the body. We use it for healing as well. We both work in spiritual healing, me and my wife. But with the meditation, I try to take people away to a point of peace and calm, which I guess emulates, or roughly emulates, maybe only 5%, that feeling in the white room, that love, that divine love, that universal love and empathy and compassion. And I want to take people there so they can experience just a fraction of what I was lucky enough and what you were lucky enough to experience.
Do you believe humanity is evolving spiritually?
I'd love to say yes. I'd love to say yes. I think we're certainly more aware. We're certainly more open. I think if you go back maybe even the course of my lifetime, things that were commonplace in my lifetime as a youngster are not now. They're not commonplace. They're not banished, but they're not commonplace. And they're not trendy and cool. They're not hip. I think people are more aware. People are more open. People are, I think, more on a search for personal knowledge and empowerment. And I love that. I think that's amazing. And the world needs it because, boy, boy, do we need it. We really do need it at the moment. We need that love. We need that spiritual maturity.
Mm-hmm.
That empathy. And the world is always going to be, I mean, I always see the world as a school, a training ground, a university, a college, whatever you want to call it. And, for me, we are sent here to learn. We are sent here to grow. We are sent here to, I think, learn things that we are not able to understand in the spirit world. How do you teach bereavement in the spirit world? No one dies. The lessons that come from bereavement, not that bereavement is a wonderful thing, it's a horrible thing, but the lessons that it allows us, it gives us pain, discomfort. I just think that we're here to learn and grow. I hope we can. I think we're on the cusp of something big. I'm a big Trekkie. I love Star Trek. And what I love about Star Trek is that they managed to get to the 23rd century. And it becomes not about money, that's gone. Not about anything, race or class, religion. It's about what you can achieve personally. How can you grow as a person? What can you give? How can you develop your skills to the highest level? I think if the human race was like that, we would develop very quickly overnight. We'd probably be visited by aliens then, because we'd be worthy of it. But at the moment, I hope so. I would love to think that we could, and I pray that we can. There's been a definite improvement in the last 50 years. So let's just hope the next 50 years it carries on in that form. And, things like this it's another step on the pathway, isn't it? Us talking, us sharing ideals and communicating. It's a single step, but it's a step in the right direction. And
I absolutely agree.
There's a lot of stuff on social media now, and I think awareness is just expanding in a general form and in a better form. And we need that to be balanced, and we need that to be caring and empathic and fair and all the rest of it. I think the human race has got a lot to learn, but hopefully we are going in the right direction. I genuinely pray. I've just become a grandparent twice.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. But I worry about, me. I've had my life. All right, I'm 62. It's not an old age to die, and I've got more years ahead of me. But if I had to go tomorrow, I'd go, well, I've had fun, and I've still got both my legs, and I've still got my sense of humor, and I'm still weird.
Yeah.
So I win. But I worry about...
If you could sum up your NDE in one message for the world, what would it be?
Life goes on beyond this physical world. This is a temporary place. We are spirit in a physical body. Love is everything and everywhere. God is love. The spirit world, again, heaven, nirvana, utopia, whatever you want to call it, is comprised of compassion and empathy on the universal scale. There is no judgment. There is none of that. It's not thinking with a human brain. It's thinking with the spiritual mind. I think just somewhere where we are allowed to express ourselves in our fullest spiritual form, Melina, I'm looking forward to it because to me, it's the start of the next journey. And boy, what a journey. And my mother did a really good sales job on it. I want to hear them singing flowers. I really do. But it's just what can be achieved. And I think of my friends and loved ones that I've lost. And I'm thinking, wow, what must they be doing now? How must they be expressing themselves? What must they be feeling? They're dancing in that divine love. They're in a wonderful place without judgment, without fear, without hatred, any of that human nonsense. And they're just purely living in a land of light and love. And who doesn't want that? I mean, it's just a wonderful thing. And I know people will say, well, that's your belief. Yes, it is, but it's a belief that's based on multiple spiritual experiences that I've been lucky enough to have. I've managed to get through this highly skeptical, analytical mind, which takes a lot. And I know there's something beyond. I know that love cannot die, ever.
Oh, I love
physical
that.
death can never sever it. Love goes on forever. As simple as that. As simple as that.
Since your NDE, you've been on a mission, you've been coaching, you've been sharing, you've been helping others heal. Tell us more about the work you're doing through your Facebook page, Life Beyond Life.
Life Beyond Life. I started up Life Beyond Life not long after the operation, actually, but about a year afterwards. It was set up primarily to inform, to give information of a spiritualistic or spiritual nature, examining evidence of life beyond this physical world. So we cover every aspect of parapsychology. We look at, say, everything from the paranormal to metaphysical, spiritual, obviously life after death communications, near-death experiences, electronic voice phenomena, just anything that encourages us to examine evidence of life beyond, not proof, because I don't think there is proof, but evidence certain that life goes on beyond this physical world and that we are not going to, when we die, which is going to happen, that's it, lights out. And I know that's a very common viewpoint these days with some people, but for me, based on my life experience, no. And it's wonderful in a group like that. And we don't have any, we've got about 1,100 people in there. But it's fascinating to share experiences. I share a lot of, I'm very much into the history of spiritual events and spirituality, parapsychology. So I will do a lot of research, and just share information about events that don't seem to fall into the bracket of, well, this goes into physics. Because it doesn't. Mm-hmm. It's metaphysical. So it goes beyond that. So does this prove that there's life after death? No, but it's evidence that there could be life after death. And it's just putting literally hundreds or thousands of those single pieces of information, like with reincarnation or something like that. And just over time, all of those, it all adds up. They can't all be fake, false, wrong, delusional. We have tens of millions of accounts of paranormal activity, of spiritual activity, of after-death communication, going back through history. They can't all be wrong. They can't all be fake. They can't all be false. They can't all be lies. If one of those is true, and this is the thing, and I think this is what scares a lot of cynical people, if just one of those is true, then life after death exists. If one paranormal thing is true, then ghosts exist. But all we need is one. One, definitive proof, definitive proof, definitive proof. So what we have at the moment is a mountain of evidence going back all the way back to ancient times, as far back as the written word. I personally find it hard for people to even automatically disbelieve it because but the evidence, it's there. You can see it's the size of Mount Everest. You can see it. Oh no, there's nothing there, and you go, oh. But at the end of the time, and you're always going to be up against that. I don't take any notice of people who. Yeah, everyone's entitled to their own belief structure and their own belief system, and that's fine. I've got no qualms about that at all. Never have.
That's right. Yeah,
nothing to do with me.
What do you have on the agenda next for you? I know you have some books that you're working on. Is there anything else that you'd like the audience to know about you?
Yeah, I'm working on 4 books at the moment. It'd be a lot easier if I was just working on one, but that's how my brain goes. I'm working on a book which is kind of a personal book. It's my short stories. A lot of it's my university writing. Short stories, poetry, life writing. I wanted to write a book of, I think I've got 52, 53 pieces of writing. And I wanted each of those pieces of writing to have an uplifting element to them. So there's light in all of them. And one of them is life writing with me writing about my mother's funeral and my mother's death. But for me, there has to be light there has to be light in everything. You can't have dark without light. So I try to put light or humor, silliness, upliftment into every piece of writing. I've got 2 novels I'm working on. I'm also working on a book of meditation. I work with 3 local charities here in the town that we live, in Gloucestershire, working with young kids. And I get great. I wish I'd done that in hindsight. If I could go back 40 years, I would be a youth worker. I'm a youth mentor, and I work with kids in youth clubs. And I'm just about to open up or work in a recording studio with neurodivergent kids to help them create music. And I've got an offer to go and work in a hospice, which I'm really interested in doing, because I think I'd really enjoy doing that. I just have to be careful. As I said, I just have to be careful giving too much of myself. But I just want to be in a position to be able to help and to be of service. And I think that's the main thing that, again, I've come back for, is I was not being of service enough to humanity and to nature. So go and do it. Don't talk about it. Don't write it in a book. Just get off your backside and go and do it. And that's what I do. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I want to thank you for being here today, for sharing such an intimate and life-altering story. Your journey reminds us to always be more than who we are. It also reminds us that our roles and our fears are more than that, and that returning to ourselves is our true path home.
Absolutely. Thank you. No, it's been an absolute joy and a pleasure, and lovely to speak to a like-minded soul. So it's been an absolute pleasure.